So I suppose in terms of just the role of cooperatives and why cooperatives are so important, well, I think one of the things is that we probably underestimate just how widespread cooperatives are across Europe. There's 250,000 cooperatives across different sectors in Europe, and this represents 163 million people, which is a third of the EU population. So this is a significant portion of our population, our primary production sectors. Across countries, then it varies in terms of the share of the market. You have really high figures, for example, in the agriculture sector in Denmark, where it represents 83% of the agri sector, in Finland, 79%. In Ireland, it varies by sector. Obviously, we've got a very large sector of being the dairy sector, which is strongly cooperative, but then in other sectors, it's more fragmented than that. In terms of the role of cooperatives within the agriculture sector, so some of the benefits that cooperatives allow farmers is the ability to concentrate their power in sourcing of input and machinery, as well as their ability to gather, transform, and commercialize their produce for the creation of value for their members. So it makes possible something that could be very difficult for individual farmers to do in terms of bringing together their collective resources to invest, for example, in equipment or technology that can allow them to create extra value from their products, where that value then can come back to the shareholders. Cooperatives can also help to adjust the production of its members to the demand of consumers, improving their economic efficiency and position in the market. So it can allow extra resources around looking at new opportunities, for example, through collaboration of research. What are the other areas that we could be looking at that could, for example, add value to waste streams, that could increase the competitiveness of our organization? And also can allow best practice sharing among primary producers in a coordinated way. For example, this could be in relation to best practice, for example, increasing yield or productivity of a particular sector, but can also be including different sustainability initiatives from farm to fork. So, for example, Carberry's Greener Dairy farmer program, which can target so many farmers by coming from the sustainability team down to the grassroots level, and it can reach a very large cohort of farmers. Within the bioeconomy, then, some of the benefits of cooperation among primary producers in the bioeconomy include the ability to access key enabling technologies such as biorefinery systems and help them to overcome some of the capex as well as technical barriers associated with implementing these. So these systems tend to be quite expensive, so it can be very difficult for individual farmers, or at times even small groups of farmers, to implement these. So being able to pool resources among the different farmers can help to achieve that. And then in terms of technical barriers, there's the potential to collaborate again with skilled technicians or scientists to actually come together and to implement some of these. And I'll give a nice example of this in action a little bit later. There's the possibility to implement new and scalable business models, some of which are only really viable at scale, which won't be targeted towards maybe some of the smaller groups of farmers or to individual farmers. The ability to leverage or engage with other companies in a coordinated way with a sufficient level of capacity. So, for example, even where farmers or primary producers might be suppliers of biomass, I've been to countries where I've met with, for example, bioenergy companies who would much prefer to deal with a single source supplier, being the cooperative, rather than having to deal with, 1,000 suppliers into this. To be dealing with a single source can simplify the process. But on the other hand, speaking to the cooperatives, they find that they can get a lot more bargaining power by the cooperative approach dealing with some of these organizations. We're seeing more and more that cooperatives have a good position in terms of attracting public funding, and that includes funding in relation to the bioeconomy. The shared ownership model that can be generated through cooperatives can create value-added generation for the participating farmers. So when value-added products are produced and sold into the economy, the value that's created can come back to the farmers within this model. And also from a bioeconomy perspective, I think securing primary producer buy-in also offers greater supply chain uncertainty. So if we want the bioeconomy to actually expand and to grow, these are business models which require, 25, 30 years of operation in order to really become viable opportunities, and in order to ensure the longevity that we need this supply of biomass. And the best way of securing this supply of biomass is to make sure that primary producers are integrated in this value-added way, this cooperative way, rather than buying into a model for, say, 3 or 4 years and then something else comes along. So I think it's really important for the integrity of the supply chain to have these firm structures around this. So then within the COOPID project, we are working with a number of cooperatives and showcasing some of these models from across Europe. Some of these are large, some of these are small. These are a few of the examples we have. For example, Valio in Finland is a really nice example where they actually collect slurries and manures from the different farms, produce biogas, and then the biogas is used as a fuel for the milk fleet for collecting the milk. So it's a nice example of circular economy in action. You have Carberry from Ireland, who have a big focus on value add and using all of the ingredients within their milk to produce different products and to produce sustainable products. Also take a really nice farm to fork approach. And we have Enda Buckley, their sustainability director, who's also been on our advisory board in Ireland within the COOPID project. And also you have big cooperatives, but you also have small cooperatives. The hemp cooperative in Ireland is a smaller cooperative, and there are business models within the COOPID project which are looking at these smaller opportunities as well. And Freya will be online later to talk more about the hemp co-op. So what I'm going to talk about is one of the showcases which we're involved in through the COOPID project, which is the Grand Est Bioeconomy Ecosystem, and its center point, which is the Pamical-Bazencourt biorefinery. So this is a large-scale model in the northeast of France. It contains 1,200 employees. Some are seasonal, some are full-time. Producing 4 million tons of biomass on an annual basis. This is mainly sugar beet and wheat with some wood as well. And it's centered around a cooperative, but it's also involving different privately owned enterprises, which you'll see later. So just in terms of this really big site, and it's one of the best examples of a biorefinery ecosystem in action in Europe, but it's a site that hasn't just sprung up. It's something that's been developed over time. It began in the 1950s when a group of sugar beet farmers came together to buy a bankrupt distillery and to convert that into a sugar beet refinery. So they saved up resources. They bought the distillery, converted it into a refinery to try and add more value to their sugar beet. And this was the first example of innovation within the co-op. But over the years, this continued, this spirit of innovation. In the 1980s, the cooperative began to think about how they could become more competitive, add value to their different side streams that were being produced from the sugar plant. And in the 1990s, they had an agreement with a cereal company around the development of a distillery. So the site was then shared between beet growers and cereal producers. And these organizations came together to found a research center called ARD, which is Agro-Industry Research and Development, to try and look at new opportunities to try and convert different waste streams or side streams that we're producing from the process and tap into new market opportunities. They also positioned themselves to try and take advantage of some of the R&D funding that was allowing them to investigate some of these opportunities, but also look into the market opportunities and the policy supports. For example, the French biofuels program allowed them to develop in the 2000s a first generation ethanol biorefinery to take advantage of this growing biofuels market. And so that has continued, and today Pamukal Bazincourt is a multi-company ecosystem. It's a biorefinery ecosystem which transforms wheat and sugar beet to produce products intended primarily for the food industries, which is the priority, but also new markets such as the chemical, cosmetic, pharmaceutical, and fuel industries. It's a 24/7 site, and aside from being kind of a commercial base, it's also got an innovation platform. So companies can actually test their innovations, work together on innovations. They have facilities for lab-based research up to industrial demonstration and everything in between, so that companies can look at testing new opportunities and looking at scaling these in this agro-industrial setting. So in terms of the business model that they're using, the biorefinery concept that's been developed at Pamukal Bazincourt is a living example of industrial symbiosis or industrial ecology. This essentially means that nothing is a waste. When a company produces a waste, we just see it as not being a waste, but a feedstock into another company's process. So all the companies are examining the different wastes that are being produced across the different organizations and looking for opportunities to use this as a feedstock, not just material resources, but energy resources, steam, and so on. Lots of different opportunities, and using the facilities that are there to test these opportunities and to try and develop new business models around these. So new companies are being attracted to the site all the time. They're betting on collaboration and sharing of resources and knowledge. The companies are stronger because they're working together, and they can reduce their costs by sharing energy, sharing resources, and also reducing logistical costs. So rather than setting up an individual company, they're now setting up their company where they can quite easily access byproducts from another process at sufficient volume that they can scale their own process. And they're also sharing this spirit of cooperation, knowledge sharing, research, and so on. And then it's the perfect location to trial and scale these new ideas, right where the feedstock is, but also the facilities are there to allow them to do this. And one other thing that the company is doing and the site is doing is actually collaborating with local universities, local schools. So it brings people out, it shows them the facilities in operation, it ties in the sustainable agriculture element in terms of agricultural college, science students, all kinds of students who are in the areas at different age groups. So this is a kind of overview of the site in operation. What you can see is Crystal Union, which is the sugar beet facility. You have Cristanol, which is a large first generation ethanol plant. They produce about 250,000 tons of ethanol per year. You have this Future Oil project, which is a second generation ethanol plant, taking the waste streams from the different food producing processes. You have Air Liquide, who are a CO2 capture company, so they capture CO2 and reuse CO2 on site. Soliance, who are a cosmetic company producing cosmetics from some of the different side streams, and Bioamber, who are a chemical company who produce succinic acid from some of the sugar beet streams as well. So you have really nice examples on site of synergies with water, synergies with steam, effluents, and various synergies on the R&D side. And this is the ARD Centre of Research, which is located on the site as well. So one of the really nice examples, for example, of this industrial ecology in action is, for example, Air Liquide, who capture CO2, which is produced in Cristanol's ethanol production process, and reuse CO2 back into the fermentation process for the production of succinic acid from the Bioamber process. So this is an example, I think, Tracy, which has been going for about 60 years now, 60 to 70 years in total. And certainly since the whole collaboration with the wheat production company has gone, it's been for about 30 to 40 years. So this is something that's working well, and it's something that's still built in the ethos of cooperative, even though it's now opening new doors to companies and collaborations along the way.